it's Ramsey.
And Camille.
And you're listening to the Hope That Helps podcast. We are glad you're back. We changed our recording schedule up a little bit, so it's a little bit early in the morning for us over here.
Yep.
We're on sleepy mode a little bit.
Yeah. I have my venti coffee over here.
Yep.
I keep accidentally ordering it because it was a previous order, but I probably need it today. So
yeah, we've got our coffee, we got our lazy sweatshirts on, but hopefully we'll still give you some helpful information this morning.
Yeah.
Even though we're a little bit more tired than usual.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about finances, what to do to prepare when you become a foster parent, what budgeting looks like, how much money, well, I mean, every state is different on how much money you receive, but, what we do with our money and just some helpful tips.
Yeah, I think it's really important before we get into this to just talk about financial transparency in foster parenting. I think sometimes why foster parents might get a bad rap or, things are said about how people use their money is just because they don't talk about it.
Right.
Or maybe the information's just not out there. But we want to be honest about it, open about it. We don't have anything to not talk about
right.
when it comes to money. So I think it's really important in this space that we, let you know kind of what that journey looks like and are honest about how we use the different benefits, the different financial things that we're given. And so hopefully you guys will find that helpful today. I think that's something a lot of people want to know just because it's not talked about very often.
Yeah, I think money can be a really taboo subject sometimes. I know for us, when we were looking into becoming foster parents, that was the first thing that we needed to talk about was, how is it doable? And especially on, lower salaries, can we take care of a child in a way that we would want to? And that was one of the main things we talked to Ramsey about from the get-go. So
yeah, I think that's a question and concern a lot of people have, and I think it's okay to have that. I think it'd be weird if you didn't. I went into foster parenting as a single person on one income, so my situation's even a little bit different where I was like, yeah, without the assistance, I don't even know that I'd be able to do this.
Right.
And I'm so thankful that I am able to do it. But yeah, I think it's a question that a lot of people have, and it's something that we need to talk about. If you're concerned about that, hopefully this episode will clear up things for you a little bit and maybe make you a little less apprehensive and more excited about potentially being a foster parent.
Yeah, I think just to jump right in, it is good to know that generally speaking, all of the child's needs will be met. I mean, There is health care paid for. There's a lot of benefits, and I say benefits because this is something we talked about. It's not, this is the least that they could have is to have their basic needs taken care of.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of resources. I should say that word. There are a lot of resources. And so that was something that we were really glad to know about is that so many things that will come up are going to be taken care of.
Yeah, and while we're getting into it, one of the, major resources given is the monthly stipend. I think that's what everyone wants to know about. How much are you getting paid? And first I want to say that using the phrase getting paid feels like an untruth. If you listen to our myth busting episode, it's not really getting paid. The stipend's actually a reimbursement. And so you go your first month of foster parenting without any money from the state. You're just kind of, doing your thing, and then they reimburse you. And so it does come every month. Here in Arkansas, we have one of the lowest monthly stipend rates because Arkansas has a lower cost of living. Mm-hmm. Each state is different. It's actually public record, so you can look up your state's foster care monthly room and board stipends. That's just part of pay transparency too. I don't think a lot of people know that. So if you're curious in your state, just Google it. It'll be up there.
Yeah, and that monthly amount is for basic living needs. So food, hygiene things, clothing. Well, I guess you technically do have a clothing stipend as well, and we can talk about that too. But just general, needs that any child would need in a month. And a lot of times, the money you get honestly doesn't totally cover all those needs, especially if you want to be generous and have a happy home for your child.
Do fun stuff. It's not going to be a lot. In Arkansas, ours is around $400 to $500 mark, depending on the age of the child. Mm-hmm. That is another thing. So depending on their age, the amounts vary depending on what state you live in. Sometimes the amounts raise, stuff like that. But it's around $400 to $500 a month for us.
Right.
Like Camille was saying to me earlier, that can be prorated too, depending on how long the child's been in your home. So if they haven't been the full month, you're not going to, receive a reimbursement for the full month. So the amounts vary. But I think something else that people don't know is that it comes in direct deposit. So when you're paying for these things, like to our bank accounts. So I think people maybe have a misunderstanding that like when you're budgeting, you're getting money from them and it's separated out like food,
right,
housing, clothing. It's not.
You need to do that.
And so I think, that could raise a concern with like, well, that money's just going in your bank account. How do they know what you're using it for? And I think that there are probably... I'm sure that there are people out there not using it correctly because it's not regulated in that way. Yeah. But like Camille said, if you're meeting their basic needs, you should be using the full amount.
And I say basic, like hopefully you are, buying toys for your kids and doing things like that for, them to have a normal childhood. Like that's what I mean by basic needs, not just are they getting noodles every day. And that's right. Honestly, that's a reality that some people do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that toys are a need, activities, hanging out with your family, like those type of things. And like you said, the stipend doesn't always cover that, but that's just part of being a parent and the fun part of being a parent. So that's kind of like the monthly situation. I'll say that I struggled with that at first of budgeting. Yeah. Because it's so fun.
Right. It is the first few months. Oh, man. I mean, I'm sure like the first year, too, if you have a long-term placement. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a parent at all, you know that you like to buy your kids stuff. It's fun. So that you can get a little tricky because the stipend isn't huge. And sometimes you can get into a little bit of financial struggle. At least I did because I was like, we're just spending like I was when I was single. And that was much different. So if I had any advice to give, especially to the single people out there, and maybe married.
We were just talking about this. I was like, I feel like we budget similarly.
We have spending habits, and sometimes those spending habits don't always translate to parenting super well. So I would encourage you to look at your budget, and if you're preparing to foster parent, maybe look at your budget and say, okay, let's live now like we had an extra person along with us. Like if we're living this certain lifestyle, will we be able to afford for them to go on this trip or to the movies with us every weekend or whatever lifestyle things you're doing? I would say try to tailor those with a child in mind if that's something that you're preparing for.
For sure. Yeah, and I think like everybody's going to budget their money differently. But for us, at first I was very much thinking like, okay, we're going to have to like take this amount of money that we have and say this much is for food, this much is for, fun stuff, this much is for this thing, whatever. And that's honestly like not how we've done it at all. Like we have just added it into our monthly amount that we get, from our job. And so it honestly balances out. I don't think that you have to look at it so meticulously. Right. Some people do, and that's fine if that's helpful for you. But for me, it was more of like, okay, for our groceries, honestly, we're going to get what we normally get and add in a few extra things. And our weekly groceries is not that much more than it was before. Yeah. So there's things like that. I don't think you have to be so specific about.
You're not going to separate out your child's food from your food in the grocery store. It's all going to be there together. But I will say make a conscious effort to say, hey, we're getting this amount to spend on our kids. Yeah. Let's consciously use that money to, like you said, benefit them and give them the life that they honestly deserve. Yeah. That's really what the heart of the finances are. Is like it's not us getting paid. It's not, them getting paid. It's like what resources can we use to give them the life that they deserve when they're going through something as traumatic as foster care. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up about the benefits because it's hard to be like, here's the benefits of being in foster care. Yeah. Being in foster care is not fun for anybody. It's not really a benefit, but this is like giving them that opportunity to live life just like any other kid would.
For sure. I know for the first few months, we were bad about budgeting. And it was also, we got May right before all the holidays hit. And so that's already a tricky time for budgeting, especially if you're like me or Ramsey. I don't want to speak too much for you, but I know we're very similar and we like to have fun and we like to do all the things. So.
Gift giving, all the presents.
Yeah. So honestly, I mean, that was a really tricky time to get a placement, is because you want to have fun.
Yeah.
You want to, in a way, take their mind off the things that they're going through and try to get a sense of normalcy. And a lot of times that takes money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. So that's obviously the main, money or benefit that's received or resource, like you said. But there are other ones too. So there are clothing stipends.
Yep.
That happen here in Arkansas every season. So when your kids go through the seasons.
Like quarterly.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And then there's things like free health care that you mentioned. There are things like you were saying earlier about, what was it, prom?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So since we're coming up on spring season, that's actually something May will get paid for. She'll get a dress. Cool. She'll get, if she wants her makeup done. I think we get a budget for that amount, and our caseworker will help us, figure that out. But that's actually a really cool thing for a teenager. Those normal things you do, like prom, will get paid for. And I think that's an awesome resource.
Is really awesome. And I would challenge you too, if you get a new placement, to ask what all the resources are. Because sometimes you have people that are really generous about telling you every single resource available to you, and sometimes people are busy, things get dropped, things are forgotten. If you need something, definitely ask or say, hey, we're coming up on the season or this activity. At one point in time, MJ wanted to play sports, and there was this larger bill for her to do gymnastics. And I asked DHS, is this something that, potentially we could get approved for out of her account? And they were like, yeah. So they ended up helping me, front a gymnastics bill. But there are certain things that, you could ask for. And it does depend on age as well. Like Camille says, obviously prom is going to be an added resource for a teenager. Obviously my kids aren't going to access that type of money.
Sure.
But it'll be allocated just to that. Mm-hmm. I would also say with a teenager, doing some sort of allowance out of the stipend. Do you think that that's maybe you can speak more to that? Maybe?
Yeah, that's actually something we've been trying to think through. I think because we were so open to any age, we didn't have this super structured thing right when we got her.
Yeah.
We've kind of had to feel that out over the past few months. Actually, something we were talking about just this weekend was doing having her read more and doing an allowance every time she reads a book and does a little report on it. Just to have her have something to do and to further her education. She loves to read, and that's just an incentive to
I love that.
To, have both, get some money and also read a book. I can't remember who was telling me they were doing that, but I was like, that's actually a really great idea. So there's things like that we're just now implementing into our lives and what we want to offer to her. But again, I don't think that that's necessarily we are specifically taking that out of the allowance that we get. No, it's as a whole, the money that we bring in, the money that is allowed to us from her staying with us, that is just going to come out of that whole and out of our budget.
Yeah, and I think that, when we're talking about all of this, you're operating very much as a family unit. Just like your average family unit would operate, you're paying for these things, you're doing an allowance, I think something else that we've talked about is her potentially getting a job. Mm-hmm. She's been babysitting for me, making money that way. So all those things would happen naturally as they would happen in a traditional biological family setting. And so, when we're talking about money, their families do different things when it comes to allowance or when it comes to this and that. Mm-hmm. But I think age definitely plays a big factor in how we use those resources.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely for older kids, if they're looking to start driving and things like that, that's actually something that people ask all the time is can a child in foster care drive. And that's actually like a yes. I'm sure that there are situations where maybe that's not an option. But there are resources like DHS will pay for driving school and things like that. So there are a lot of resources. I think it was a great point what you said is you have to ask a lot of times because that was something we were like, hey, we'd love for Maymay to start driving. She's at that age where she's going to start driving soon. And so we want her to start to have the independence that she needs, once she graduates high school eventually. And so, those are things that we are trying to think through as like parents and be good parents and like not only parent her well while she's in our home, but also equip her for when she's independent.
And I think about that too, when we're talking about money, like a big concern that I have and one that I still like, something I'm very intentional about is like my kids' future, cars, college, stuff like that aren't benefits that my kids will receive. And I have 2 kids that are very close in age together, so I'll be paying for 2 cars, 2 college tuitions. And that's something that now I'm using part of our monthly stipend to grow accounts for them to think forward in the future. So there is some financial planning. I think it's easy to be like, oh yeah, DHS helps in all these areas. And for some, yes, for some, no. Right. And depending on your situation, like obviously I've adopted my kids at this point too, so that changes the game a little bit. Right. But saving for their future and knowing like if you're making a commitment to a kid for life, you're also making a financial commitment
for sure
to their future as well.
For sure.
And I know you guys have talked a little bit about college. Can you explain, at least in Arkansas, what that looks like as far as college tuition goes?
Yeah, I think for a child who's a little bit older, college is definitely a big thing to look forward to and to plan for. So depending on whether your child is going to age out or the child is going to be adopted after a certain age, in the state of Arkansas, college will be paid for any state school. So that's a great resource. Again, it's like, I wouldn't call it a benefit, but it's a great resource for a child that does want to look into school. Absolutely. And in addition to that, along with that, there's like resources for getting a car. There's resources for getting an apartment and things like that. So a child technically is not outside of resources until they are 24, I believe is the age. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think I actually know
awesome.
someone right now who just aged out of that.
Wow.
And so I believe that's the age, and I've heard that too, like whenever you foster an older child, to be prepared to not be responsible for them, but to help them until they're that age, which is actually really interesting. It's kind of interesting because if you are with your biological parents and say you're on their insurance, you get off of it at 25, 26.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's actually an interesting thing that's in comparison. Like, you have that time, not just at 18 that you're cut off. Like you have a little bit of time after that. I think it looks a little different. I don't know that, this is something we're still learning. I think that it looks different as far as the monthly amount that you would get. I don't know about that yet. That's something we'll come to it when we get to it.
I think that's awesome that they support them so long through their transition process into adulthood. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, even if all of the support's not there, at least the financial, support, it could be, helpful to them. I think that's just amazing.
I'm sure the age changes a little bit, and I could be wrong on that age in Arkansas. That may have been a different state, but I'm pretty sure after 18, there should still be a lot of resources for a child that ages out. I actually
just got an email this morning about SNAP EBT benefits.
Oh, yeah.
So what was formerly known as food stamps, if you will. EBT benefits for kids that are aging out and kids that have gone through foster care. They're continuing to get those benefits too. So, there's a lot of things that, like I said, can be a helpful resource. I'm trying to think if we missed any of them.
I mean, I guess we did talk about healthcare.
Yep.
The free healthcare, everything is paid for, which is kind of insane to go into a doctor's office and not have to pay a single thing.
Medicaid, which covers their dental and things like that. And then, which, is a huge blessing because that would be very expensive. And that is, again, a concern. And it's okay if you're like, hey, I can't afford healthcare for another person. Yeah. That's why we're answering these questions, is just so that you can be like, oh, maybe this would be more possible for us with all of these different resources. Like we said, free and reduced lunch. My kids are school age, so that's nice. I don't have to front another bill for more food.
Right. Yeah. Which for us, like we do
pack lunch.
I mean, technically we don't have to, but I think that's something for our family that's been a sweet thing to be able to do.
I love that.
So,
well, I guess I'm just lazy.
No, you're not lazy. I literally do like pre-made salads, and May loves that. So,
sometimes on Friday.
It's easy, but.
Sometimes on Friday I do a little fun lunchbox situation. But free and reduced lunch is great if, that's not something that, if you feel like that's something that could help your budget. Yes, I won't say you can't afford because we can afford lunch, but, it's something that could potentially help your budget.
And just like weekly planning, I think sometimes that can be an added thing to think about.
Yeah, especially if you're a single parent and you're working, you're like, oh gosh, lunch boxes.
Totally.
Some of you out there are rock stars. I'm a hot mess mom, so I'm so sorry. It doesn't always happen like that.
I can be too. I'm not saying just because I literally go, here's a salad, there you go.
I did it. And something else that I want to personally talk about that I experienced was using resources that weren't necessarily given to us by the state. Yep. Like some things that I did to help offload costs and stuff like that. Like we looked into a free after school program where Camille works. Shameless plug to our besties at the place we're recording right now.
Yeah.
So the shout out to them for giving us their podcast studio as well. But they run a free after school program. They also serve dinner there for free for the community. So my kids literally get all of their meals every single day provided to them. And now they come home and eat a bunch after that too. But, I looked into that resource. I looked into some other resources for activities, whether that be like free parents' night out or free leagues they could play sports in, or other, things that could kind of help offset child care or other costs that might incur. I really looked into things like that. We also have something here called CityServe.
Yes.
Which is a resource. And if you're in Arkansas or you're in a state that has CityServe, I highly recommend, if you have a need, whether you're looking into foster care or not, that needs to be met, reach out to CityServe if you know a family in need. That's another little shameless plug for CityServe. But I reached out to them whenever I was trying to get furniture.
Yes.
For my room. And I said, hey, do you guys have any furniture lying around? And their organization basically takes overstock items and gives it to the community.
Yep.
That's it. From big brands that I'm not going to name because I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble.
Right. But they typically do it through a church. So like they'll connect with the church.
Yep.
And then through that church's congregation, fulfill those needs.
Yeah, meet needs in the community for all types of families. But for me specifically, I had obviously had this connection to CityServe and said, hey, furniture is not something I can really outfit right now out of my budget to make this, foster care room what I want to make it. Could y'all help me with that? And they got us 2 beds that were really nice and some other furniture pieces and stuff out of the warehouse. And so, is there anything in your community that, potentially you could use as a resource?
I think for me, that's a little intimidating to figure out those resources.
Yeah.
I love having a friend like Ramsey who will like beat down a door.
I will.
To figure out like what is available to her. And I love that. I think that having a friend like that kind of empowered me to like look into it more. Yeah. I will say the agency that we went through to license for foster care will have access to all those resources.
Yes.
Like they will have so much information. And DHS does too, but I think like Ramsey already said, like you have to ask. I think if you go through an agency, a lot of times they will like offer that up and be like, oh yeah, take advantage of this and this and this. Like they'll be way more forthcoming with a lot of those resources. And so I think that that's a good way to find out about those resources is maybe local agency or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They send emails or Facebook alerts or whatever, text messages and say, hey, we've got this up at the office.
Because that's their job. Their job is to like equip foster parents with the tools that they need to do this well.
Yeah, and they have resources like foster care closets where you can go and pick out free clothes. You know, people do toys. There's so many things going on.
Free Christmas. I mean,
Christmas is a big one. DHS can help with Christmas. So can these other organizations. We have a nonprofit organization that does that here. So yeah, I would definitely say check it out. As far as like, you know, kind of gathering your own resources, there are a couple other things that we did. I know that you and I both had a foster care shower.
Yes, which sounds so weird. I think it's like...
It seems kind of cringy because we're not having a baby and like it feels like a weird way to like, I don't know, get people to give you stuff. It's definitely not what I necessarily wanted to do. I don't think you really wanted to do a formal one either, but it's something that if family and friends are wanting to support you in, I would recommend doing it if that's something that they want to do in order to kind of give you a leg up. I know both of ours, people give us a lot of like gift cards.
Yes.
And that was really helpful. So if your friends and family are looking for a way to like financially support you, you know, we talked about in that first month, you will not have any financial resources from the state. And that may also be prorated for the next month.
Yep.
So having helpful stuff like gift cards at Target or, you know, any shopping or even food, movies, like some fun stuff to do. I think a shower can be helpful in that way.
Yeah, I definitely think it was very helpful for us because you're just spending.
Yeah.
Well, I say you don't have to spend a lot of money. Like, again, it's like to each their own. But for us, that was something that was important to us is like, go have fun. Go buy toys, go do things to help bring some normalcy to this child's life.
Yeah.
And again, that takes money. So like that first month, honestly, the first few months, it's like we've been like, okay, we got to get back on track. Now that we're like settling in, we got to get back on track. But I think that was really helpful. And I'm so thankful for our community. But I think too, it's like for us, you know, we're very involved in a church. And so we have people that like want to support us in that way. And so it didn't feel as weird to be like, hey, like I can't afford to do this. Cause I think that was my big thing is like, I feel kind of guilty asking for money, like when I'm choosing to do this.
Yeah.
But I mean, people do that when they have a baby too. So it's like, I think just because it's not a normalized thing doesn't mean that it's not okay to do.
Yeah.
But we also had people that wanted to do it for us. We weren't just like asking like, hey, can you like throw me a shower so that I can get some money?
Yeah, no, that was not the vibe.
No.
One thing that I did, because I was sharing really early on social media, I actually started my fostering social media account when I decided to license. So like I went through the whole process of licensure.
Right.
And one thing that I did was the Amazon storefront, the very controversial Amazon storefront. People, you know, have different thoughts about that. But this is one thing I will say about something like that or something like a shower or, you know, asking certain people for resources is that when I did that, I saw that people near, far, close to me, maybe not as close to me, that have a heart for kids in foster care really bought in to some of the things I was doing because they want to be a part in making a difference in this kid's life. I actually remember a girl who works here, actually. She bought me some plates, and she had written a note off my Amazon storefront, and it's still on our refrigerator. And it was like, I pray over these plates that when you sit down, you would have conversations that would be, you know, fruitful, and you guys would enjoy your time together. And so it really like helped shift my perspective of like, these aren't just material things. This just isn't just a financial gift. This is like somebody's heart for these kids coming through in something as silly as an Amazon storefront.
Yeah.
And they're like, I hope you think of us whenever you enjoy this item or you play with your kids. And I hope this is something that helps you and helps them. And that to me meant everything. And it really shifted my perspective because I felt guilty too a little bit of like, oh, I'm asking people to buy things like plates and cups and whatever. But it's not asking them to do it because I can do it too. But it's more asking them if this is something you want to buy into and have a part in. It's a way for people who are close to you, who are not close to you, to be able to support you. And so I would encourage you, if you're stepping into this, reach out to the resources.
Yes.
Resources that the agency's doing that, DHS is doing that, other people are putting on nonprofits. They're doing it because they want to.
Yes.
Not because they feel guilty. I've realized a lot, like people won't give money to things that they don't support. Like if they're giving you their money, their time, their material things, their efforts, it's probably because they believe in what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think just like anybody would give to anything else, a nonprofit, a church, a mission group, like it's because they feel like that's the way they can help.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody doesn't feel like it's right for them to bring children into their home. That's okay. But they want to be a part of what you're doing and what you feel called to do. And so I think that people want to help. It's just giving them the space to.
Yeah. And to flip the script, if you're somebody who wants to help, if you're in a financial place where you're like, hey, I'm not open to full-time care, but I know I can support someone, I would encourage you to look out for these resources, not just to receive from, but also to give to. I think we're at a place now as a family where, post-adoption and all of these things, that's something that I want to do is take back some things that we've been given and give back to the community. And so, as we do social media or potentially even one day make money from this podcast, I hope that, that will be something that we can put back in to resources for the community. And so I would pray that if you're blessed enough to do that you would look at these resources as a way to give as well. And so, that's my encouragement to you. And if you're thinking about foster care, don't let finances be the thing that deters you from it. Do your research.
Yep.
Hopefully this podcast was helpful to you in that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that it can be intimidating on the forefront of it. And I've talked about this multiple times. My husband and I don't make a lot of money. We're a nonprofit. And I think that was a big question mark of like, can we afford this? Because I think it's also different, like having a biological child. There's different things that come with that. And so it felt so much more intimidating to bring a child into our home that, we feel like we need to provide for in a different way. And so it was just a very intimidating thing to walk into. So I feel like Ramsey helped us so much. And honestly, I was like, if a single mom can do it, and have 2 kids, then we can definitely do this.
Yeah, and just know we sympathize with you in that way.
Yeah.
We say, we were can we afford this too? So, I hope that you feel like you're having that conversation with us, just like Camille and I sat down and had that first conversation. We just want to encourage you, it is intimidating. We've been there, we understand. And we hope that you don't let that hold you back. We hope some of the information we provided is helpful to you. And I hope that regardless of your financial situation, just like we talked about in relationships, you would step into foster care if that's something you believe that you should do.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
hope that helps. Thank you so much again for listening to the Hope That Helps podcast. We are so excited that we are back, and you can keep up with us all the time on social media at Hope That Helps Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can email us if you have any questions at hopethathelpspodcast@gmail.com. Something new that we have while we're talking about money is our listener support on Spotify. So if you're liking the podcast, you like what you hear, I want to give a little bit of the heart behind listener support. That support is just a donation that goes directly to us to keep doing what we're doing, to keep growing the podcast, and to hopefully one day, be able to give back in some type of way to our community, not just through the podcast, but through other avenues as well. So if you want to support us by going to listener support, you can do that on Spotify.
Also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please go leave us a 5-star review, follow us, leave us a comment. We love to know what you think about the podcast. Ask us questions. This is really important because it helps get our podcast out to other people who want to know this content, want to know this information. So please, please, please go check that out. Also, thank you to our production team, Eric Pardo and Zach Grimes. They're so amazing. We're so thankful for you guys.
All right. Bye.